AAA games suck, they're just getting worse and you should stop playing them immediately. But what if that actually happened? What if all the players in the world collectively decided to stop playing AAA games? No one would buy them, no one would play them, just zero sales. I don't know why this sounds strangely familiar. Anyway, I imagine this could lead to multiple different scenarios, ranging from a gaming apocalypse to, well, you'll see. We'll explore these outcomes and determine which one would ultimately be the most probable. But before we answer that question, we have to first look at the core of the problem. The recent bombshells in the gaming world, like the downfall of Ubisoft and Sony's situation, prove that not even the industry giants with the biggest budgets are immune to players calling out their bullshit and just not buying and playing their bloated piles of crap. Sorry, got a bit carried away there. But still, there is a reason everyone is talking about this, and it's simply that this doesn't happen normally. Sure, games flop from time to time, but they still at least make their budgets back and then some. And it's not like something has changed and suddenly people stopped buying crap. EA is releasing the same FC game every year, and they are drowning in money. The bajillionth Call of Duty just released, and even though it has mixed reviews and costs $70, of course it's still the #1 selling game on Steam. And don't get me started on macro transactions, how we honestly should start calling them.
You want me to pay you, what, $50 for fucking shiny blue?
So why is this? Why do people keep buying these flaccid games and supporting those aggressive monetization practices? Well, I think there are three main reasons. First one being simply habit. Some people just grew accustomed to buying AAA titles, as in the past these games were basically the pinnacle of quality that you couldn't find anywhere else. And now they stick to this idea, ignoring the fact that things might have changed along the way. The second reason is popularity. AAA games are inherently popular, they have big marketing campaigns and wide reach, and everyone and their mother is talking about them. And the final reason is biased journalism. Journalists don't want to bash these games because it is advantageous for them to keep the big studios on their side. And if you don't believe me, believe them. Alright, enough preamble, let's come back to the main question. What would happen if all people suddenly stop supporting these problematic games? The first potential outcome I'm calling the AAA apocalypse or apocalypse. This would basically mean a second coming of the video game crash. So let's go back in time to 1982 when Atari was the world's leading video gaming company. But then they released an unfinished Pac-Man port and 2 shitty moving tie-in games, and surprise surprise, people did not buy as much copies as expected. So when investors saw the losses, they ran faster than Usain Bolt on the 100 meters. This, along with other factors, led to what we now know as the video game crash of 1983, and for a moment, video games died. But if something like this was to happen today, we have to take it to the absolute extreme, meaning no one plays any AAA games, not even the good ones. Imagine 0 people play Concord, not that hard, but also 0 people play Baldur's Gate 3, for example. This would hypothetically completely fuck up the market and definitely crash it. The stock prices of all the companies going down, it's all over the media. But the question remains, would gaming be reborn again? After 1983, it was revived obviously, but the gaming industry is much more developed now, which brings us to the second potential outcome, that maybe smaller games might save the industry. In today's gaming world we have AA games, indie games, mobile games, yeah maybe scratch that. Point is, there are so many great games that don't have those big budgets, but people love to play them. We have a lot of recent examples as well of them outperforming AAA titles like Lethal Company, Palworld, but I mean, Palworld was so successful, it even made Nintendo jealous. If you don't know, they are suing them for breaking a patent that is literally throwing a ball and catching a creature. Like, what the f? Anyway, smaller games are a lot of the time more fun, more creative, and sometimes straight up better than AAA, and if big games would die, I think it's highly probable that indie and AA would carry the torch. If you stop and think about it though, this would also make indie studios AA now, and AA would kinda become AAA. There would just be less money thrown around in general. And as years and years go by, could there be new indie games? Even smaller than what they were before? And if the AA studios become bigger, do they also become money-hungry machines and start releasing overpriced crap with monetization? Stop. It doesn't matter what would become of these companies in the far future. What truly matters is that for a brief moment in time, we would have a gaming landscape that focuses solely on you, the player. It focuses on fun game mechanics, innovation, and creating worlds that you can get truly immersed in. Well, that would be nice, but let's come back to the real world. It's true that developers and publishers always wanted your money, there's no doubt, but now in 2024 it's objectively worse than ever. For example, in 2006, Bethesda decided to release what is considered to be the first microtransaction in gaming history. They made horse armor as paid DLC for Elder Scrolls Oblivion, and even though it only cost $250, it still had a negative reception and people were saying it was way too expensive for purely a cosmetic item. But saying $250 is too much nowadays is like saying $115 is too much for Star Wars Outlaws Ultimate Edition.
I'll have to ask my accountant about that.
What I'm trying to say is, AAA gaming is not in a great state right now, and players are starting to know this. Now before we get to the final, most realistic scenario, let me talk to you for a second. This is my first video, of many hopefully, and I'll be doing video essays on various gaming topics, so if you're enjoying this one, consider hitting subscribe and come along for the ride. So we discussed what would happen if all AAA games died, what if smaller games prevailed, and now let's look at a scenario that's more grounded in reality. Remember when I mentioned 1983 and the video game crash? Well, to be honest, I lied. A bit anyway. Because gaming never truly died. Sure, it died in the biggest market, that was America, but it was still going quite strong in Europe, and later things started brewing in Japan, and from the ashes of the game crash, Nintendo and Sega rose with their first consoles, and you could say that over time they revived gaming again. Now let's compare this to the modern day situation. The gaming industry is much more established, there are so many companies of different sizes, and most importantly, the number of gamers is ever rising. I mean, if you want to be statistically pedantic, the number of humans is also rising, so there's always going to be a flat increase unless a drastic event happens, but actually the influx of new gamers is dropping every year, but that can be attributed to that. There are 3.32 billion gamers worldwide. So let's not even pretend there is a possibility that all these people are gonna stop playing all AAA games. Gamers will still buy good games, they don't care if they are AAA or indie, so sabotage of this caliber would never work. But let's just say that the recent trend of these games not making enough money would continue, and at least all the bad games would not be played. Then what would happen? Well, first of all, things might shake up a bit at the top. Some companies that fail to adapt might end up bankrupt or just change industries, and others would try to adapt and make more honest games to regain their fan base again. Also, not to mention that there are many companies that already make great games without the need to put microtransactions and DEI everywhere. From Software, Rockstar, even CD Projekt Red. Yeah, I know Cyberpunk had a rough release, but at least they took the time to fix it. And the base of the game was good to begin with, and that's kinda the point. We also have many more examples of recent games that were just good, like Helldivers, Black Myth Wukong, and Space Marine 2. So these studios that still understand what players want would ultimately prevail and become more powerful. Hopefully they wouldn't start being greedy as well, but I don't think so. I think this could be an actually realistic outcome and potentially very healthy and beneficial for gaming and for you, the player. So, what conclusion can we draw from all these scenarios that we discussed? For starters, I think that the idea that every AAA game would start being played is a bit ridiculous, and all kinds of shenanigans could happen if that was the case, like the crash of the industry or indie games taking over. But what could actually happen is that players wouldn't play those bad games, and to an extent that is what's starting to happen right now. So can this trend become so huge that a fundamental change will be inevitable, or will the biggest companies just shake this off because money always wins? We can only wait and find out, but be the change you want to see. I recently found out that's not what Gandhi actually said, but it applies well here. The next time you think about buying the overpriced skin for a game that you hate, but still force yourself to play, stop for a moment. You know that little indie game that was sitting in your wishlist, gathering dust, and you wanted to give it a try, but you were always just playing something else? Well, maybe try that one and support a smaller studio that still pours its heart and soul into their craft, and you might find that you even enjoy this one more. And if not, there is always something else out there.